Why doesn't the government want him to turn himself in? Because then they can't ask for detention. So they go and they arrest him. They arrest a guy who came to New York to turn himself in.
Right now, Davis is fighting for bail ahead of his trial, which he has pleaded not.
Imagine this, Voletta Wallace, the mother of the late legendary rapper Biggie Smalls, is on the phone with a man who holds the keys to the truth, a man who has been shouting the same story for years, and yet, somehow, it's only now starting to catch fire. That man is Gan Deal, a former bodyguard and close confidant of both Biggie and Sean Diddy Combs. Now, years later, their conversation feels like the spark to ignite something much bigger. This time, Voletta Wallace isn't just speaking as a grieving mother, she's demanding answers, pointing fingers, and most shockingly, she's naming Diddy as the one responsible for her son's tragic fate.
Gene, here go Ms. Wallace.
Hey, Ms. Wallace, Gan Deal.
Oh, hi, Gene. How are you?
All right, man. You know I ain't seen you since I came to your house and had that conversation with you. How you been? You all right?
I've been okay. I've been watching you on stage.
But here's where things get really interesting. This isn't the first time Gan Deal has raised these accusations. He's been making waves for years with his claims that Diddy, who once stood as Biggie's close ally, is hiding dark secrets. He's accused Diddy of being involved in Biggie's shocking demise, but what makes this moment different? It's the fact that Voletta Wallace herself is now fully backing him up, calling for the FBI to reopen the investigation. Let's be real, when the mother of one of the greatest rappers of all time, a woman who has been quietly watching from the sidelines, suddenly calls for action, it's hard to ignore.
What was the backstory behind that, Big Mom calling you?
My man, that had to be, if I say exhilarating, it has to be one of the highlights of coming out here.
To get the full picture, you have to understand the dynamics between these key players. Voletta Wallace, since the day of her son's untimely passing, has always believed there was more to the story. She's always suspected that Biggie's end wasn't just an unfortunate twist of fate, but something much more deliberate. And Gan Deal? He was right there, not just as a bodyguard, but as an insider who witnessed firsthand the chaos surrounding Biggie and Diddy's lives at the height of their fame. So when these two start talking, you know something big is brewing.
Ms. Wallace is a strong lady. You know what I'm saying? Ms. Wallace, you know, she, and I'm not saying because she's Jamaican, you know, or anything like that, that she got that down home, like she is about her business.
Their phone call, which has recently gained attention, is nothing short of emotional. Voletta's voice is heavy with anguish as she talks about her son and how much she believes Diddy had a role in what happened. Gan, on the other hand, is calm but firm, reminding her of the details he's been saying for years, the behind-the-scenes tensions, the suspicious moves, and the way things seem to be set up. The conversation is electric, not just because of what's being said, but because of who's saying it. This is Biggie's mother, after all, someone who has stayed relatively quiet until now.
And certainly Mr. Davis will have his opportunity to present whatever evidence he wishes to.
But why now? Why is Voletta Wallace calling for an FBI investigation so many years after Biggie's life was cut short? Part of it is timing. Diddy's recent legal troubles have cast a long shadow over his public image, and suddenly people are questioning how much they really know about him. In September 2024, Diddy was arrested in New York on serious charges that include accusations of using his business empire for illicit purposes. While these charges don't directly relate to Biggie's case, they paint a much larger picture of someone who may have been involved in shady dealings for years. People are starting to wonder if Diddy is capable of these things now. What else could he have done in the past?
The story we're tracking, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs on watch at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center after two judges denied his request for bail. This as a grand jury is expected to hear new testimony from workers very soon.
Diddy, of course, denies everything. His legal team is standing firm, calling these charges a mistake and accusing the media of blowing things out of proportion. But the truth is, the allegations are piling up. Federal agents raided two of his homes earlier this year, and the case against him is growing stronger. For Voletta Wallace, this is all just more evidence that points to a deeper conspiracy. She believes that Diddy has been manipulating people and situations for years, and that Biggie's demise is a prime example of just how far he's willing to go to protect his interests.
I used to be hurt because I knew the people that she had around her was Puff boys. So we could never connect like that. So only time I tried to connect with Miss Wallace, is when she needed me and she used Perry Sanders to call me.
Gan Deal has been saying similar things for years. In interviews, social media posts, and public appearances, he has repeatedly claimed that Biggie's life ended because of power struggles within Bad Boy Records. According to Deal, Biggie was on the verge of leaving the label, fed up with how things were being handled. He was planning to start his own venture, which would have been a major blow to Diddy's empire. And that, according to Deal, is the real reason Biggie was targeted. It wasn't just about music, it was about control. Diddy couldn't afford to let Biggie walk away, not when so much of his success was built on Biggie's talent and influence.
Prosecutors gonna glamorize a case. I've had cases, and I hadn't worked for Diddy for years. You understand? And the prosecutor gonna say, Diddy former bodyguard. Get in the shootout. Diddy former bodyguard threatened a person's life or did this and did that.
Let's not forget the long-standing rumors that Biggie knew something he shouldn't have about another tragic incident, the passing of Shakur. There have always been whispers that Biggie was aware of Diddy's involvement in Shakur's shooting, and that knowledge made him a liability. It's a theory that has floated around for years, largely dismissed as just another conspiracy. But now, with everything happening, people are starting to take a second look. Could it be that Biggie's end wasn't just a random event in a violent feud, but a carefully orchestrated move to protect Diddy's empire? There's no shortage of theories when it comes to the tensions within Bad Boy Records, but one thing is clear: there was trouble brewing. Biggie and Diddy, once close collaborators, were growing apart. Biggie was no longer content to play second fiddle, and as his career soared, he began to think about going solo. And let's be honest, Diddy wasn't the type of person to let something like that slide. With his empire on the line, could he have taken drastic measures to keep Biggie from leaving?
Puffy, who's a multimillionaire, decides to align himself with the Southside Crips. So now you got this whole gang that's going back and forth.
The idea might sound far-fetched to some, but to those who were close to the situation, it's entirely plausible. Gan Deal has repeatedly pointed out that the timing of Biggie's passing couldn't have been more convenient for Diddy. With Biggie out of the picture, Diddy was able to maintain control of Bad Boy Records and continue building his empire without any real competition from his former protege. And it wasn't just about music, it was about influence, power, and money. Lots of it. As this new chapter unfolds, Voletta Wallace's demand for an FBI investigation feels more urgent than ever. She's no longer willing to sit by and let the official story go unquestioned. The allegations against Diddy in his current legal case only add fuel to the fire. It's becoming harder to dismiss the idea that there's more to Biggie's demise than we've been told. As more information comes to light, the connections between past events and present-day allegations start to form a pattern, one that suggests Diddy's influence might stretch much further than anyone originally thought.
Like I told people, I said, if Miss Wallace would have called me and told me to shut it down, I would have shut it down. Miss Wallace ain't called. She knew how to get in touch with me. If Miss Wallace didn't tell me to shut it down, I'm going to keep doing it because I respect you, Miss Wallace.
The gravity of Diddy's arrest in September 2024 can't be overstated. The charges he's facing now go far beyond anything we've seen before. They paint a picture of a man who has been using his position of power for years to manipulate and control the people around him. And while these charges are unrelated to Biggie's demise, they give us a glimpse into the kind of person Diddy might really be. Could it be that the same tactics he's allegedly used in his business dealings were also at play in the events surrounding Biggie's final days?
They gotta come up with some kind of evidence, and they gotta have Keefe D say and point to some kind of evidence, which I don't think he could, that Diddy put out the hit on Tupac. Yeah, they gonna press him.
As the narrative builds, it's clear that Diddy's current legal troubles have cracked open the door to a deeper investigation into his past. The question now is whether authorities will finally take the claims of people like Voletta Wallace and Gan Deal seriously. For years, they've been saying the same thing, that Biggie's end was no accident, and that Diddy played a role in covering up the truth. With the FBI now involved in Diddy's other legal matters, could this be the moment when Biggie's case is finally reopened?
You know, that's the whole truth on the Tupac thing, you know what I'm saying?
Gan Deal's accusations have never wavered. He has long maintained that Diddy's ambition and desire for control led to Biggie's downfall. According to Deal, Diddy's actions weren't just the result of business pressures, but part of a larger, more sinister plan to consolidate power within the music industry. Deal's account is chilling, especially when you consider how closely he was tied to both Diddy and Biggie during those pivotal years. He wasn't just an outsider looking in, he was right there, in the middle of it all, watching as the relationships between the players deteriorated. It's easy to see why Voletta Wallace is so determined to keep pushing for answers. The evidence may be circumstantial, but the connections are hard to ignore. The tensions within Bad Boy Records, Biggie's plans to go solo, and Diddy's need to maintain control all add up to a narrative that can't be dismissed. For Voletta, this isn't just about closure, it's about justice. She's convinced that the truth has been buried for too long, and she's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure it finally comes to light.
Any case that's 27 years old sometimes presents some challenges, but we feel very confident that the criminal justice system will work in this case.
As for Diddy, his denials have been consistent and forceful. He has repeatedly stated that he had nothing to do with Biggie's demise and that the accusations against him are simply unfounded. But with his recent legal troubles casting a shadow over his credibility, those denials are starting to sound less convincing. People are beginning to ask whether the man who built his empire on the back of Bad Boy Records might have done more than just look the other way when things got ugly.
This has to be a 100% culture shock. I can't imagine living a lifestyle of the incredibly rich and famous and then going into this very dark, impersonal, cold, austere facility.
At the heart of this unfolding drama is the question of motive. If Diddy was involved in orchestrating Biggie's end, why would he do it? The answer, according to those who believe the theory, lies in control. Biggie's talent was undeniable, and his influence in the hip-hop world was unmatched. As he grew more successful, he began to realize that he didn't need Bad Boy Records to achieve greatness, he could do it on his own. And for Diddy, that was a threat. Losing Biggie wouldn't just mean losing one of his biggest stars, it would mean losing control of the narrative, of the industry, and of the money that came with it.
Now for what's trending in true crime, nearly 30 years after the legendary rapper Tupac Shakur, the man accused of his is now claiming that Sean Diddy Combs once ordered a hit on the rap icon. In a recent court filing, a 2009 interview between police and Dwayne "Keefy D" Davis is making headlines yet again.
As the conversation between Voletta Wallace and Gan Deal continues to make waves, it's clear that this story is far from over. The allegations are serious, the evidence is mounting, and the demand for an investigation is growing louder by the day. Whether or not the FBI will reopen the case remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, Voletta Wallace isn't backing down. She's determined to get the answers she's been seeking for so long, and with Gan Deal by her side, she might finally have the chance to do just that.
I just feel like
it wasn't a random shooting.
After Pac got Biggie had no business being in LA. That's just all I say.
As we prepare to dive deeper into the history of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, it's important to remember that this story is about more than just two icons. It's about power, control, and the lengths people will go to protect their empires. Could Diddy have been pulling the strings all along, manipulating the events that led to Biggie's demise? That's the question that remains at the center of this unfolding saga, and it's one that only time and a thorough investigation will answer.
The only man currently facing charges in the case, Dwayne "Keefy D" Davis, claims that Sean Combs, also known as Diddy, paid for a hit on Tupac.
Now, let's step back for a moment and talk about how this all began, how a rivalry in the 1990s sparked one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in music history. To truly understand the full scope of the allegations against Diddy and the chilling suspicions that continue to swirl around Biggie's untimely departure, we have to dive deep into the East Coast-West Coast feud that dominated the hip-hop world during that era. This wasn't just a rivalry between two rap icons, it was a full-blown war fueled by egos, ambition, and let's face it, power plays.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Then when you look at Pac's situation, it's just an everyday situation. You a rapper, you up.
So, let's set the scene. The mid-1990s was a wild time in the hip-hop industry. With Bad Boy Records on the East Coast, led by Diddy, and Death Row Records on the West Coast, with the infamous Suge Knight at the helm. Both of these men were hungry for dominance, and as the tension grew between the coasts, the stakes rose higher and higher. At the center of it all were two of the most celebrated rappers of their generation, Biggie Smalls representing the East Coast and Shocker holding it down for the West. On the surface, this seemed like nothing more than musical competition, but behind closed doors, the rivalry was getting personal.
VD named Diddy 77 times in court documents related to Tupac.
What a lot of people forget is that Biggie and Shocker weren't always enemies. In fact, they started out as friends, with Shakur even showing Biggie the ropes when he was just getting his foot in the door. But as their careers skyrocketed, things took a dark turn and rumors of betrayal and power moves started circulating. It didn't help that both Diddy and Suge Knight were stoking the flames, each eager to claim the crown for their respective coasts. And here's where things get really interesting. there's a long-standing theory that Diddy wasn't just a bystander in this East Coast-West Coast beef. Some people believe he had a direct hand in orchestrating the conflict, using it to propel his own empire. After all, what better way to secure your spot at the top than by eliminating your biggest competition? This theory has gained even more traction in recent years, with whispers that Diddy was somehow involved in Shakur's tragic end in 1996.
Now, Combs has long denied any involvement with Tupac's. He's never been charged. Our question this morning, how believable is Keffe D's Diddy accusation?
Now, before we go any further, let's be clear, no one is saying that Diddy pulled the trigger himself. But there are plenty of people out there who believe he might have had something to do with it behind the scenes. The theory goes that Diddy allegedly hired the Compton Crips, a notorious group that's been linked to various crimes over the years, to take out Shakur during that fateful night in Las Vegas. This wasn't just about taking down a rival artist, it was a strategic move to cripple Death Row Records and cement Bad Boy's position as the dominant force in hip-hop.
He's the only witness that's tying Puff to the Pac thing. The only witness that's alive.
And here's where things start to get really wild, because if Diddy was involved in Shakur's passing, then it raises a much darker question. Did he orchestrate Biggie's exit too? Think about it, with Shakur out of the picture, Biggie was arguably the biggest star in the game. But behind the scenes, there were rumblings that Biggie wasn't entirely happy with his situation at Bad Boy. Rumor has it that he was planning to leave the label to start his own company. And if that had happened, it would have been a huge blow to Diddy's empire.
Wasn't no drive-by. Car was standing there at the corner. We talk about all the time, bruh.
This is where the conspiracy theories really start to heat up. Some people believe that Diddy saw Biggie's potential departure as a threat not just to Bad Boy, but to his entire career. And if there's one thing we know about Diddy, it's that he's always been incredibly protective of his brand and his business. So could it be that he decided to take matters into his own hands?
We pull out behind him, he blow past the light. We stopped at the light.
According to some, Biggie's exit in Los Angeles in 1997 wasn't the result of a random act of violence, but something much more calculated. The idea here is that Diddy, fearing the loss of his biggest artist, might have had a hand in setting up the situation that led to Biggie's departure. After all, Biggie's passing was eerily similar to Shakur's both gun-down and drive-by incidents, both unsolved to this day. Could this really be just a coincidence, or is there something more sinister at play? Of course, there's no hard proof tying Diddy directly to either incident, but the circumstantial evidence has always been there. And now, with his recent arrest on other serious charges, people are starting to revisit these old rumors with fresh eyes. Diddy's legal troubles are casting a new light on his past, and more people are wondering if there's a connection between the power plays of the 1990s and the man he is today. But before we dive even deeper into Diddy's potential involvement, let's take a step back and look at the broader context of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry. This wasn't just a personal feud between two men or two record labels, it was a cultural battle that engulfed the entire hip-hop community. At the height of the beef, it seemed like every artist on both coasts was getting dragged into the drama, and the tension was palpable.
When the whole East-West thing started, we were caught off guard, and that broke my man's.
Suge Knight, for his part, didn't shy away from the conflict. In fact, he often escalated it, using every opportunity to take shots at Diddy and Bad Boy Records. Suge famously called out Diddy at the 1995 Source Awards, making a not-so-subtle dig at him by offering artists who didn't want their producers dancing all in the videos to come over to Death Row. That moment was a turning point in the rivalry, and it signaled just how deep the animosity ran.
It has taken countless hours, really decades, of work by the men and women of our homicide section to get to where we are today.
For a lot of people, it seemed like the East Coast-West Coast bout beef would eventually come to a head, and tragically it did with the losses of both Shakur and Biggie in quick succession. Their departures marked the end of an era in hip-hop, but the questions surrounding their last days have never gone away. And now, more than 2 decades later, people are still asking the same questions: what really happened? Who was behind it? And could Diddy have been involved?
Well, I certainly view everything he's saying with a lot of suspicion, right? I mean, he was in an interrogation in 2009 and offered this information up. And if he's truly involved in the Tupac, he's looking to throw anything out there, to throw mirrors out there to deflect the accusations against him.
It's easy to see why some believe that Diddy might have had a motive to take out Shakur. After all, Shakur was one of the most influential voices in hip-hop, and his connection to Suge Knight made him a natural rival for Diddy, but when it comes to Biggie, the theory gets even more complicated. Could Diddy have really been that ruthless? Could he have betrayed the very person who helped make Bad Boy Records the powerhouse it was?
So why you think they tied Diddy name to it?
Because it makes the East Coast and West Coast war works for the authorities and for the news media. Didn't no cops do that. It was an East Coast, West Coast war, and it was a drive-by shooting. It was never no damn drive-by shooting.
These are the questions that Voletta Wallace is asking now, and she's not the only one. With Diddy's arrest in 2024, a lot of people are starting to wonder if the truth has been hidden in plain sight all along. And if the FBI does decide to reopen the case, it could lead to some shocking revelations about what really went down all those years ago. But let's not forget, this isn't just about Diddy. Suge Knight's role in the rivalry can't be ignored either. There's been plenty of speculation over the years about whether Suge had a hand in orchestrating the demise of Biggie, just as many have speculated about Diddy's involvement in Shakur's passing. Some believe that Suge wanted to take out Biggie as payback for what happened to Shakur, while others think that the two events were part of a larger, more orchestrated series of moves designed to keep both record labels on top.
They pressing him so bad, and I don't know how I should say this, that a couple of weeks ago, a week or two ago, they beat him up in jail. The cops.
Of course, Suge Knight has denied any involvement in either case, but his reputation speaks for itself. Known for his intimidating persona and alleged ties to various incidents of violence, Suge has long been seen as a key player in the darker side of the hip-hop industry. Whether or not he was directly involved in Biggie's passing, his presence looms large over the entire saga, and it's impossible to talk about the East Coast-West Coast rivalry without mentioning him. But here's the thing, while the rivalry between Diddy and Suge Knight is well documented, what's less talked about is the potential connection between the two. Some people believe that Diddy and Suge might have actually had more in common than we think, and that behind the scenes, they were both playing the same game, using the rivalry to boost their own profiles while pulling strings to maintain control of the industry.
He's 3 law firms on retainer. I don't know how much money is coming in, but I know that a lot of money is going out every single month for Diddy.
It's a theory that sounds wild at first, but when you consider how much power both men had at the time, it starts to make sense. The hip-hop world in the 1990s was as much about business as it was about music, and both Diddy and Suge were businessmen first and foremost. Could it be that the rivalry was just a smokescreen, a way to distract people from the real power moves happening behind the scenes? If the FBI does decide to take another look at Biggie's case, these are the kinds of questions they'll have to consider. And it's not just about Biggie and Shakur anymore. This investigation could open up a whole new can of worms about the power dynamics in the music industry during that time. Were there other players involved? Was there more at stake than we ever realized? And most importantly, will we ever get the answers we've been waiting for?
You know, this could potentially be a diversion, turning an investigation or a trial into a circus. And it's, when you do that, it's easier to get a dismissal. Ask Alec Baldwin. But the judge has already accused attorneys for Davis of shaping media attention about the case involving, as you know, one of hip hop's most fascinating mysteries, saying it seems like your plan, your end goal here is to make some kind of show.
One thing's for sure, Voletta Wallace isn't going to stop until she gets to the truth. For her, this isn't just about justice for her son, it's about uncovering the entire web of lies and manipulation that surrounded his case for decades. And with Diddy's recent legal troubles putting him back in the spotlight, the timing couldn't be more perfect for a renewed investigation. As we close out this chapter of the story, it's clear that the East Coast-West Coast rivalry was about more than just music. It was about power, control, and ultimately survival. Whether Diddy was truly involved in Biggie's passing or whether the events of that night were the result of something else entirely, the truth is still out there waiting to be uncovered. And with new developments coming to light every day, it's only a matter of time before the pieces of the puzzle start falling into place. So what do you think? Could the East Coast-West Coast rivalry have been more than just a musical feud? Was Diddy's involvement in the events surrounding both Biggie and Shakur more strategic than we ever realized? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay tuned.